I look down at my wife's phone, the light from it illuminating my face in the darkness of our living room. The house is quiet around me, still settling down after our dinner. I try to think back to that time, only an hour ago, and I remember that things seemed normal. We sat at the table eating chicken marsala, talking about our day. I can't think of anything out of the ordinary, not until just now. The screen goes black, and I tap it again to wake it back up. I was looking for the picture of us from our vacation down south, the one at sunset where my wife's hair was glowing in the light. She left her phone on the kitchen counter, so I picked it up. Just find the photo and place it, I say to myself, my voice echoing to no one. But there it was, a message sliding down from the top of the screen. It was a text from Danielle. It said, "He doesn't suspect anything. Tomorrow same time?" My heart skipped a beat. I tapped on the message, knowing I shouldn't, knowing that this was a turning point. "Mike says he can vouch for you if Josh asks questions," Danielle's previous message reads. "You're getting good at this, girl." Her reply made my heart sink. Practice makes perfect. Speaking of practice, last night was incredible. Still can't believe we pulled it off with him right upstairs. I scrolled up and up and up. There were hundreds of messages dating back months. Each one was like a dagger in my heart. "Remember how he even said thanks to Mike for helping you out with that work crisis?" Danielle's text from 3 weeks ago haunts me. Poor, trusting Josh. I glance at the clock and see it's already 11. I have been sitting here for almost 2 hours, uncovering the truth about my own life and my own marriage, and my own house. It didn't feel the same anymore. Every corner of it was now tainted with their lies. I open another conversation, this one between Laura and Mike. "Miss your hands already," she texted him just yesterday morning. Yesterday, when she had kissed me goodbye at the door, with lips warm from the coffee I'd given her. I heard a car approaching outside, and I paused for a second, thinking maybe Laura was getting home early from her girls' night with Danielle. But the car passed by, and I realized it wasn't her. I browsed through our pictures. There was one with me and Laura, celebrating Christmas together, another one with her and Mike, from the barbecue we had last summer, and a few with Laura and Danielle from work events and parties. I chuckled at one of the messages. Laura had texted Danielle about me, saying, "Josh is so OCD. He measures everything. It's kind of cute, but mostly annoying." "At least I'm precise," I mutter to myself, as I continue to read through the messages. I start taking screenshots, capturing all the evidence. I guess that's what architects do. We like to calculate things. We like to know the exact dimensions of things, even if it's how much our wife has been cheating on us. I get a notification. Laura, posting to her Instagram story. I click on it. There she is, smiling with Danielle at some bar downtown, their faces close together as they hold up cocktail glasses. "Girls' night," reads the caption. The timestamp shows it was posted 2 minutes ago. I open my mapping app, my hand steady now. Laura's location sharing is still on, something we did for safety reasons. The blue dot shows her nowhere near downtown. She's at Mike's house, just 3 doors down. The clock chimes midnight. I should feel something more. Rage, perhaps, or crushing despair. Instead, there's just a cool clinical clarity as I continue to document everything. Laura always teased me about my attention to detail, about how I could spend hours perfecting architectural plans until every measurement was exact. "Measure twice, cut once," I mutter under my breath, quoting the old adage my university professor used to repeat. Funny to think I'm building a case file. That's how I occupy myself. My phone buzzes with a text message, and I see it's from Laura. "Having a great time. Don't wait up, honey." I look at it for a long moment before replying. "Enjoy yourself. Say hi to Danielle for me." There are those little dots appearing and disappearing on the screen, indicating she's typing, then stopping, then typing again, for a long time before she finally writes back, "Will do, love you." I put her phone down back on the counter, precisely where I found it, then go upstairs to our bedroom. I sit down at my desk and open my laptop. There's some work I have to do now, and it will require my full attention. But that's all right. I've always been good at working late at night. This job will require it to be flawless, though. Every piece of the puzzle has to fit together perfectly. Every detail has to be accurate, because precision is important to me. I keep working the entire night, and when I finally hear Laura entering the house at 3:47 a.m., I have everything I need. The sun is coming up and Laura is getting ready for work. I've been up all night, sitting at my desk. My computer has gone into sleep mode, but I can still see the folders in my mind, all labeled and organized by date and place. Laura is taking a shower. It's going to last for 12 minutes. Then she's going to brush her teeth before blow-drying her hair for 8 minutes. I hear the coffee machine brewing downstairs. I set it up last night before she got home. It's 7:15 a.m. "Josh? You awake up there, babe?" she calls from downstairs. Her voice is normal. "Yeah, just wrapping up a couple work emails," I reply, feeling pretty good about how convincing I sound. "Be right down." I shut my computer down and looked at my reflection in the mirror. I looked surprisingly calm and collected for someone who had just lost everything. Laura was in the kitchen making herself a sandwich. She was wearing a gray skirt and a white shirt. "You worked late," she says, handing me a coffee mug. "I didn't hear you come to bed." "Deadlines," I say, taking a sip. "How was girls' night?" She told me a long story about drinks and chats, and I thought back to the text messages I had read the night before. "Miss your hands already." "Sounds like a blast," I say when she finishes. "Danielle knows how to party." I thought I saw something in her eyes for a second, but it disappeared just as quickly as it had appeared. "You know how she is." "We should have them over for dinner sometime," I said. They're going through some stuff," Laura says, fiddling with her bracelet. "Probably not the best time." "That's a shame," I say, noticing she won't look at me. "Marriage is hard, huh?" She looked at the time and grabbed her things. "I have to go. I have an important meeting today." "Okay, good luck. Love you." "Love you too," she says, already walking down the path. I watched her as she backed out of the driveway and waited 5 more minutes to make sure she had really left. Then I powered up my laptop at the dining room table. The first bank statement was for our joint account. I started copying suspicious transactions to a new spreadsheet. At the top of the list was a charge for a hotel downtown, 3 weeks ago, the same date as one of her team building workshops. I received a text message from Mike. "Hey dude, Laura said you might need help with the deck this weekend?" I look down at the text message and wonder if he's sending it from the same place where my wife's phone was pinging last night. "Thanks," I reply, "but I think I can manage." I open a new browser tab and begin to look up divorce lawyers. I make a spreadsheet with names, contact info, and various other details, and then compare them to Laura's firm, making sure there are no conflicts of interest. A few minutes later, the doorbell rang. I got up to answer it and saw it was our neighbor, Mrs. Chen, with her usual Tuesday morning delivery of muffins. "Joshua," she says with a smile when I greet her at the door. "You look sleepy, son. Hard at work?" "Yeah, long week," I tell her, taking the basket. "How's Mr. Chen?" "Harold's great, always gardening. He mentioned yesterday how sweet Laura is, helping Mike Thompson with his new backyard plans." I feel my grip tighten on the doorframe. "Landscaping plans?" "Yes, she's been coming over to hang with him in the backyard pretty frequently. Your wife is an angel, you know? Such a sweet girl, always going out of her way to help people." I smiled. That's Laura, always looking out for everyone. After she left, I added another column to my spreadsheet, witnesses. Maybe I could use the fact that Laura had been seen on the street with Mike to my advantage in some way. The rest of the morning and part of the afternoon I spent on working on my spreadsheet. I knew I had to lay the ground for what I was about to do, and I needed to make sure to have all my ducks in a row. Laura texted me around lunchtime. "Miss you today? Let's have dinner at 7, okay?" I looked at the heart emoji, the same one she'd sent to Mike the night before. "I'll be there," I say. "I'll even make dinner. I'm in the mood." I turn back to my laptop and open a folder filled with screenshots. I call it Foundation, because that's where it all begins. If you don't lay a solid foundation, everything will collapse. I can't let that happen. The grandfather clock in the living room strikes 3 times. I have 4 more hours before Laura comes home. 4 more hours to prepare, to make sure I don't make any mistakes. I open a new document on my laptop and type demolition schedule at the top. Sometimes you have to tear something down in order to build something new. And sometimes, if you're really good at it, you can do both at the same time. I spend the rest of the afternoon building my case, gathering every bit of evidence I can find. By the time the sun sets, I'm in my study, and by the time it's completely dark outside, I'm in the hidden room behind the wall in our spare bedroom. I've replaced the ticking of the grandfather clock with the sound of my surveillance equipment. I've exchanged the light of day for the darkness of night, And now, as midnight approaches, I'm sitting in the shadows, watching my wife live her life through the eyes of a camera. It's 11:43 p.m., and I can see Laura on the couch in the living room. The camera shows her face, dimly lit by the screen of her phone. "I miss you too," she says into her phone. "No, he's been working late all week. I don't think he's seeing anybody these days." I make a note on my spreadsheet, recording the time and details of the call. "Tomorrow night?" she asks, daring to hope. "Josh mentioned he has that client meeting in Berkeley. Won't be home until late." I do have a client meeting on my calendar, one I created for just such occasions. My calendar is filled with them now, giving Laura the days off she wants and me the space I need. A text message came through from Mike. "Hey, neighborhood BBQ this weekend. You coming?" I wait 3 minutes and then reply, "Sorry, can't make it, but you guys should go anyways. Laura will be happy to join." The typing bubbles appear again. "Your loss," he says. "Yeah, I bet it is." Laura headed upstairs. I switched to the hallway camera and saw her walking past my office door. She stopped for a second, as if she was listening for me typing on the keyboard. I wasn't, but I had recorded myself typing a few times and had it on a loop. The next morning, "You're heading out already?" she asks, sounding a little surprised. "Meeting in the city," I answer, fixing my tie. "Probably won't be back for dinner." She looks hopeful for a second, then her face turns to a mask of concern. "Another one? You're doing too much, babe." I kiss her on the cheek, smelling the perfume I noticed on Mike's porch furniture in the video footage from my outdoor cameras. "Someone has to pay for those shoes you like," I say, forcing a smile. She laughs, but it's not a happy sound. "Then at least come to the cookout this weekend. You need to take a load off." I shook my head and put my laptop case over my shoulder. "I wish I could, but I have to get this article done. You go and have fun with everyone." "It won't be the same without you," she says. But I can tell she's already thinking about her next gig. "You'll be fine." I drive for 3 blocks, then pull into the parking lot of a coffee shop. From there, I open my laptop and check the video feed of the house. I see that Laura is on the phone again, now with Danielle. "He's not coming," she says into my ear. "Are you sure Mike can get out of his thing with Sharon?" I create a new column in my spreadsheet. Potential witnesses, Sharon Thompson. The rest of the week goes as planned. I decline 3 dinner invitations, 2 movie nights, and 1 get-together at Mike's. Laura goes to all of them, and I get all of her absences on camera. "I'm really worried about Josh," I hear her say to Danielle in the kitchen. "He's been so withdrawn." I hear Danielle's laugh over the listening devices. "Maybe he's cheating on you." Oh, the irony. I add it to the list of evidence. Friday night, and I'm back at my real office downtown, putting the plan into action. My financial advisor looks at me a little funny, but doesn't ask any questions as we change my banking information and my investment portfolio. "Joint account," he says slowly, "can be difficult in times of change." "Yeah, don't worry," I say, returning the final form to him. "I just like to be ready." I checked my messages and saw that Laura had texted me. "Missing you, will you be home for dinner?" "Late meeting," I say. "Don't wait up." I watch her as she orders dinner for 2. Shortly after, at 7:30 p.m., Mike comes through the side gate, which I had greased just last Sunday. They have a late dinner together, sharing a bottle of wine, and talking and laughing about me. I record it all and add it to the growing collection of evidence. It's not until after midnight that I return home. Laura has cleaned up after herself. She always does. But this time I got it on tape. Everything. Their dinner, their kissing, their fucking on my desk in the study. I stand in the doorway for a long time, looking at her sleeping face. You wouldn't think she was capable of all this just by looking at her. What a liar. I sigh, taking out my phone. I have a notification from one of my monitoring systems. Laura is looking through our shared cloud storage, browsing old photos. I turn on my laptop and watch as she scrolls through the pictures on her phone. She stops at one of our Christmas photos from last year. "Are you up?" I whisper. She's a little startled. "I'm just having trouble sleeping. I miss you." I sat down on the bed across from her. She held her phone in her hand, slightly turned away from me. "We should plan another trip," she says. "Just the 2 of us, like before." "That would be nice," I lie, thinking of the deleted cloud items I found, the separate vacation pictures of her and Mike in hotels I'd never been to. Maybe the Caymans again? The sunset photo I'd been looking for that first night? "Maybe," I say. I get to my feet. "I have a bit of work to do." "Well, don't work too hard," she says, glancing away from her phone for a split second. I pick up my phone and check the camera feeds one last time. Laura is still working on something at the computer, typing away. Maybe she's talking to Danielle, or maybe she's setting up her next meeting with Mike. Everything she says is being recorded and stored. I open my demolition schedule document and make a final note in it. Everything is ready now. The evidence has been collected, the resources have been gathered, and the support structures have been identified. All that's left is to wait for the right moment to strike. I close my laptop and go to bed. Laura is already asleep, snoring softly next to me. She has no idea that her entire world is about to come crashing down around her, and that I'm the one who's going to make it happen. Tomorrow is the neighborhood cookout. I'll be there, pretending to be busy with work, while Laura puts on her fake smile and tries to impress everyone. I'll be watching her, recording everything, and preparing to use it against her. I can't wait to see the look on her face when she realizes what I've done. I've always been good at demolishing things. It's my job, after all. And this is going to be the biggest demolition of my life. I hit the road early in the morning, carrying a folder filled with evidence. As the town begins to stir, with people heading to work and cafes opening their doors, I leave behind the place Laura and I called home, ready to transition from a passive observer to an active participant in the unraveling of her lies. The following morning, I arrive at the law office of Morton & Associates 15 minutes early. I sit in my car and look at my watch, waiting for the appropriate time to go inside. The firm is highly rated and, most importantly, not friends with Laura. After another 5 minutes, I get out of my car and walk to the front door. I open it and take the elevator to the 12th floor, then open up the frosted glass door to the receptionist's area. "Mr. Bennett, Miss Morton is ready for you." She stood up as I entered her office, offering me her hand. "Take a seat," she says, pointing to a leather chair that's likely worth more than your rent. I sat down in front of her and put my folder down on her desk. "All right," she says. "What are you here for?" I'm a little surprised she doesn't beat around the bush, but I don't let it show. I clear my throat. "I want to talk about options for my marriage." "Options," she says, rolling the word around in her mouth. "Or do you mean a way out?" I looked at her. "The latter." She nodded and picked up a notepad. "How long have you been married? 7 years next month? Kids?" "No." "Great," she writes it down. "That makes it easier. Now, why are we here?" I open my folder, spreading out printed screenshots, bank statements, and surveillance logs. She raises an eyebrow as she looks over the evidence. "You've been busy," she says. "I'm an architect. My job requires me to be detail-oriented." "And revenge, too, it seems." She doesn't sound critical, just clinical. "It's not about revenge," I say. "No?" She holds up the most thorough sheet of the bunch. "Most guys don't catch their wives cheating with the aid of a very specific floor plan." I smile. "I like to plan ahead." She looks at me, folding her hands together. "How long have you known?" 2 weeks, 3 days, and about 14 hours. "And she doesn't know you know?" "No. I've kept up appearances while I conduct my research." She nodded. "Smart. A lot of people jump the gun and confront the person they're spying on too early. Then they lose all their leverage." I noticed she used the word leverage. "So, what do you think I should do now?" I ask. She starts formulating a plan. "All right, first of all, we need to protect your assets. I see you've already started transferring some of your money?" "Yes, everything's right here." I push another spreadsheet across her desk. "Great. Now, as for the video recordings, while I find them very persuasive, I need to confirm they have been collected in accordance with the law. What techniques did you use?" We go through my notes together. She shows me where I could improve things, what else I could do. "These people your wife was sleeping with," she says, looking over the notes I've made, "this Mike Thompson guy and Danielle Parker, they're married?" "Mike is. Danielle's single, divorced." "Interesting. Maybe we can get their spouses on our side. If we approach them the right way." That hadn't even occurred to me. "Sharon, she doesn't know anything." "She may appreciate knowing, or she may not. Tread lightly." And with that, she closed the folder on my file. "Mr. Bennett, you've provided me a very good starting point. But I must confirm with you. Is this really what you want?" I sat quietly, thinking about Laura's laugh at breakfast that morning. How real it had sounded. How many other things about her were just as well rehearsed. "You sure?" I nod. "Positive." "Okay." She scribbles a few notes on a notepad. "I'm going to tell you what to do. Just do it. Don't try to confront them. Don't try to expose them. Let them keep thinking they're smart. We're gonna get them. I left her office with a plan of action and everything I needed to get started. As I looked at my reflection in the elevator doors on the way down, I realized I didn't look the same as I had before. I was different now. Laura texted me on the way back to my car, asking if we could have lunch together. I told her I would be busy with a meeting. I had a client meeting in an hour, but there was enough time to drive by Mike's place and see if Laura's car was parked out front. I decided I would do that, just so I could add it to the list of evidence I was going to present to Miss Morton. After all, I needed to prove my case, and I was going to do that very thoroughly. The next few days I followed Miss Morton's instructions to the letter, documenting everything I could. I went to bed Sunday night with a feeling of dread and anticipation. I didn't sleep much, and when my alarm clock went off on Monday morning, I gathered up everything I needed and went to my home office to get started. The following morning, I sat in my office, staring at a blank email draft. It was addressed to my boss, and I was about to report Laura's behavior. I had been thinking about this for a few days, and I had carefully crafted my message in my head. Now, it was time to put it into words. I began by attaching the evidence I had collected. I included the photos of Laura and Danielle together, the text messages they had exchanged, and the recordings of their conversations. I wanted to make sure that my boss would understand the severity of the situation, so I made sure to include everything I had. "Morning, honey," Laura calls from the kitchen. "Coffee?" "Good, I got some," I yell back, even though my hands are shaking. I hear her footsteps approaching, and I quickly exit the email window. She comes into the office wearing a dark gray skirt and a blouse. "Big meeting today," I lie. "What about you? What's on your schedule?" "Just a bunch of meetings. You want to go out for dinner tonight? Maybe that new Italian spot?" "Sure, that sounds nice." She blew me a kiss and left. A minute later, I heard the front door close. I reopened the email and attached the rest of the files. There was a lot of evidence, including credit card bills with strange purchases, hotel receipts, and timestamps showing when she left work. I hadn't given the email a subject line yet. I wrote, "To the HR department, report on a breach of the code of conduct." I stared at the send button and hesitated for another second. Then I clicked it. Laura didn't notice anything in the coming days. I acted like I always did. We had breakfast together, we kissed, we talked about what we wanted to do over the weekend. At night, I checked my mailbox to see if the HR department had responded to my email. On the fourth day, she came home early. I heard her car on the driveway at 2:15 p.m. and saw her through the cameras rush into the house. She had been crying, and her makeup was a mess. "Josh," she calls, a catch in her voice. "Are you back?" I gave myself a few seconds before I replied. "In here, honey." She came up, holding her handbag. She had been crying. "What's wrong?" I ask, standing up and pretending to be concerned. "They fired me," she is crying. Someone sent HR pictures of me and Danielle. They said it was inappropriate workplace behavior." I went over and hugged her. "I'm sorry, Laura." "It's not fair," she sobs against my chest. "We didn't do anything. Someone wants to ruin my life." I caressed her head, thinking of how she would do the same for Mike when she thought no one was looking. I asked her what had happened. "They blackmailed us," she said, pulling away and wiping her eyes. "They had pictures, texts, everything." She was crying again. "They fired Danielle, too." "Who would do that to you?" I asked gently. "I don't know," she cries, sinking into the couch in the office. "I'm fucked. I'm ruined. My reputation, my job." I sat down next to her and gave her my handkerchief. "We'll figure this out. Together." She took it from me, her hands shaking. "Josh, there's something else. Something I need to tell you." Was she going to come clean? About everything? I just... She starts crying again. "I can't believe this is happening." "Shh," I hug her. "It's okay. I'm here." I can see his car driving past our house outside the window. He was probably wondering why Laura was home, why she didn't answer his texts. Maybe he'd learn about her termination tomorrow when the email was sent to everyone at the company. Maybe he'd even worry about his own job a little bit. "What am I going to do?" Laura asks into my chest. I tell her that we'll figure it out, one way or another. She cries and cries, telling me how she doesn't know what to do, how she's scared of losing our house, of being laughed at by our friends, and more. I comfort her and tell her it's going to be okay, all the while thinking about the next step of my plan. "Why don't you go rest?" I say to her, once her cries have subsided. "I'll make you some tea. She says yes, her face flushed from crying. I watch her walk upstairs, feeling sorry for her and what she's about to go through. In the kitchen, I make her a cup of tea. I get a notification on my phone. It's Miss Morton. First step done. Keep going. I delete the message and take the tea upstairs, where Laura is lying in bed, curled into a ball. I put the tea down on the bedside table, sit down next to her, and stroke her hair. "Why don't you try and get some sleep?" I whisper. "Things are always better in the morning." She reached for my hand as I was about to leave. "Thanks for being here, for being so understanding." "Of course, that's what husbands are for." I went back to my office and opened my laptop. I started writing another email. This one was to Sharon Thompson. The subject line read, "There's something you should know about your husband." At 4 o'clock, I attached the first photo. Then I spent the next 2 hours preparing and writing on envelopes. At 6 o'clock, I collected all the material, took my car keys, and snuck out of the house while Laura was sleeping from having cried so much. I drove around the neighborhood for a while, trying to find a spot close enough to have a good view, but far enough away that Laura wouldn't see my car. I'm in my car right now, parked down the street from our house. I have a few envelopes with me, ready to be dropped in the mailbox. Inside each one is a bomb that will destroy Laura's life. "Let's start the countdown," I say, lifting the first envelope. The first one is a picture of Mike and Laura laughing together in his backyard, with his hand on her lower back. It's from last Tuesday when she said she was going to yoga. This one is addressed to Barbara Wilson. The second one is a screenshot of Laura's text to Mike about going over to his house while his wife was out of town visiting her mother. This one is addressed to Carol Stevens. Mailing something. A knock on the window startled me. It was Tom from a few houses down. "Just some work stuff," I reply, rolling the window down and covering the addresses with my hand. "How's Laura doing? I heard about her job. That's rough." I pretended to be sympathetic. "Yeah, she's pretty torn up. She really liked that job." "Well, send her our best. But just between you and me." He leans in, speaking a bit more softly. "Sharon Thompson's been talking some weird shit about Laura and Mike." Great. The whispers are beginning. "Probably just a rumor," I tell him, glancing at the time. "Listen, Tom, I've got to run and get these letters sent." On my way out, I stopped at the post office and dropped off the 7 letters, one by one, at irregular intervals, so that they wouldn't be noticed as going out at the same time. When I got back to my car, I saw that I had a text message from Mike. "Dude, Sharon's been acting strange. Have you heard anything from Laura?" I waited a few minutes before replying. "Haven't noticed anything. Everything okay?" 3 typing bubbles appeared, then disappeared, then, "Yeah, probably nothing." Back home, I found Laura in our bedroom, still wearing the clothes she put on when she left for work this morning. "I brought home food," I say to her. "Your favorite Thai spot. Sharon Thompson just unfriended me on Facebook and blocked me on Instagram." "Seriously? That's weird." "I sent her a message and she's not replying," Laura says, her voice shaky. Do you think someone told her?" I sat down next to her on the bed. "Told her what?" She hesitated for a second and then said, "Oh, you know, about my job, about why I got fired." "She's probably just busy," I say, grabbing her hand. "Come on, have something to eat." As we eat dinner, her phone keeps buzzing, and each time she looks at it, she looks more and more worried. "Carol Stevens is at it again in the neighborhood group," she whispers to me. Something about home wreckers getting what's coming to them. I took another bite of pad thai. Maybe take a break from social media? "Josh," her fork is shaking. "People have been talking about me and Mike." I put down my chopsticks, still staring at her. "What sort of things?" "Lies," she says, too quickly. "Horrible lies, but I don't know how—" The doorbell rings, startling her. I looked out the window and saw my next-door neighbor, Barbara Wilson, standing on our porch with a stack of what appeared to be photographs. "I'll grab it," I say, getting to my feet. "Why don't you take a nap?" As I open the door, Laura almost runs up the stairs. "Joshua," Barbara says, "I'm worried about your wife." I led her inside, pretending to be the confused husband, and she showed me all the photos, telling me everything she had heard and seen. "We're really sorry you had to find out like this," she says, patting me on the knee. "The neighborhood wanted you to know." I thanked her, showing her out. As I watched her leave, I saw lights coming on in the houses down the street. Phones ringing, text messages being sent, social media blowing up with the devastation I had orchestrated. When Laura came back upstairs, she was crying again. Her phone was buzzing with new notifications. "They all know," she cries. "It's all messed up. How did it happen?" I sit down next to her, trying to console her, but also take out my phone to look at it. I had received a message from Miss Morton. Social pressure proceeding as planned. Maintain position. "We'll get out of this," I say to Laura as she sobs in my arms, "one step at a time." I hear cars pulling up outside. More neighbors arriving, no doubt, with pieces of the puzzle. Pieces which, I'm sure, will lead to the full destruction of Laura Bennett and her perfect life. Right on time, it's amazing how well this plan is coming together. The evening wears on, and soon Laura is crying, alone inside her house. I watch her through the window until she eventually goes upstairs and collapses in bed, absolutely exhausted and ashamed of herself. That gives me enough time to make some progress on a few other things, and I begin compiling spreadsheets and numbers on my laptop, still hiding in her dark house. I sit in the living room, the only sounds coming from my typing and the tick-tock of the clock. I have all of the documents in front of me, having translated Laura's lies into numbers. I'm just about to move the last of the money from our joint savings account into my new one. "Just following protocol," I say to no one in particular. Miss Morton had been very clear in her directions. I look down at my phone to see a text message from Mike's wife, Sharon. "I can't believe what they did to us," it said. "One day at a time," I say in return, playing my part as his confidant after I told him about Laura's cheating. The clock strikes 12:30. Laura is still sleeping upstairs. She cried herself to sleep earlier and has been in bed since then. Based on what she said, she's been inside for the last 3 days since the rumor started, not daring to go out. I look at the routing numbers and account numbers on the screen and make sure they match up. Then I look at the amount again. It's the same total as our joint savings, with the exception of the money that came from her work. I hit send. Next, I open up my spreadsheet. I've been working on it for weeks now, keeping track of the money that was being stolen from me. I've added a new tab to the sheet tracking my wife's spending habits. "Oh, honey," I say, spotting a $3,000 charge from yesterday at her favorite boutique. "Keep digging that hole." My phone buzzed. "Miss Morton, received financial documents. Will begin filing paperwork. Can we meet tomorrow at 9 a.m.? Confirmed," I text back. I hear a noise from the second floor and quickly minimize my screens. "Josh?" she says, her voice weak. "What are you doing?" "Going over some contracts," I reply, pointing to the documents surrounding me. "Can't sleep?" She hugged herself like she was cold. "I keep looking at my phone to see if someone is going to protect you." She recoils. "What? You don't believe them, do you? All the terrible things they're saying?" Her acting is incredible. She's done this to me so many times before. "No," I lie. "Come here." She leans into me on the couch, and I can feel her tears soaking my shirt. I continue sorting papers with one hand over her head. What are you working on?" she asks through her tears. "Just some financial stuff for tax time," I reply, angling my body to hide the papers from her view. "Boring stuff." "You and your damned organization," she laughs through her tears. "You used to give me such a hard time about my sloppy expense reports, remember? I found those reports." "Maybe you should try to rest," I urge. "Tomorrow might be better." She hesitates, asking, "Will you come up soon? Just one more part to write." When she leaves, I open up another file, showing all the money she's been stealing from me. A few dollars here, a few dollars there, all adding up over the past few years. She was careful at first, but became more bold as time went on. And whenever I asked about it, she had a perfect excuse. I look at my phone and see an email from my accountant showing my financial records from the past 2 years. I had asked for the records to be backdated, and as I looked through them, I saw everything I needed to see. It's past 1 p.m. by the time I'm done photocopying documents. I scan them and email them to my lawyer. All of the bank statements showing cash withdrawals and money disappearing. All of the receipts from hotels and restaurants, spas, and gift shops, all of them paid for using my credit card. I had been too careless, and she had been too careful. I get a ping from my email monitoring program, showing that Laura is accessing her email from upstairs. I watch as she sends a message to her old boss, asking if she can have her job back. "Please," she writes, "I can explain everything. The photos were a misunderstanding." I added the email to my evidence folder, noting how she never really denied the accusations. A few minutes later, another text came in from Sharon. "Mike just confessed everything. I'm meeting with my lawyer tomorrow. Stay strong, I reply, already considering how this new element will likely factor into the timeline of my story. The night goes on as I keep working, gathering more evidence and labeling it appropriately. It's like building a house, I think to myself, and I want to make sure the foundation is solid. I want to make sure this house will stand the test of time. I want to make sure Laura doesn't get a penny. I can hear her crying upstairs. It's like a background noise to the sound of my fingers hammering on the keyboard. I read the last message from Miss Morton. Good. I got everything. Tomorrow we'll get started. I shut down the computer and put away all the documents in a folder. Tomorrow, when Laura is hiding away from the world, from the people who betrayed her, I'll make sure to forward all of this to Miss Morton. I make my way up the stairs. It's 3 o'clock now. Laura is still awake when I enter the bedroom. She's not crying anymore, though. I get changed and lie down next to her. I listen to her breathe, and eventually, she falls asleep. I listen to her rhythmic breathing, and I think to myself that I should have done this a long time ago. I listen to her breathing, and I think to myself that this will be the last time I ever have to endure it. I listen to her breathing, and I smile, because I know it won't be long now before it stops. Good night, Laura, I think to myself. Sleep well. It's going to be a long day tomorrow. I spend the morning in my home office, making phone calls, sending emails, and working on everything that needs to be done. Laura gets out of bed sometime before noon, and I can hear her walking around in the house until she eventually settles down in the living room with her laptop. It was a Saturday afternoon, and Laura was filling out job applications in the living room. She was still extremely anxious about what had happened, and every time she heard a car going past or a voice from outside, she looked up fearfully, as if she thought they were coming to get her. The doorbell rang, making her jump. "Are you expecting someone?" "No," I say, lying, and I stand up and head for the door. I see the shadow of a man in a suit through the glass. The process server is a young man, looking to be in his late 20s. "Are you Mr. Joshua Bennett?" Yes." "You've been served," he announces, handing me an envelope with the precision of 1,000 repeated motions. I hear her gasp behind me. "Josh?" she asks, trembling. "What is that?" I shut the door behind me and turn to face her, the manila envelope in my hands. "Divorce papers," I mutter. Her face went pale. "What?" "You know why." She takes a few steps back, almost falling on the coffee table. No, you can't." I read from the letter, even though I already know what it says. Petition for dissolution of marriage, citing infidelity, financial misconduct. "Josh, don't," she says to me. "Let me talk to you." "What, about your relationship with Mike? Or was it Danielle first?" She collapses onto the couch. "How?" "Why? Does it even matter?" I laid out the papers on the coffee table. All the information recorded, dated, time-stamped, photographed. It's all here. She looked at the proof of her betrayal, her hands shaking as she flipped through the pages. "You were spying on me?" "Just listening. At last." "All of it," she stammers. "The job, the gossip, you?" I stayed on my feet, not wanting to get too close to her. "I didn't ruin it, Laura. You did." "I'll be different," she begs, holding onto my wrist. "We can make it work." I took a step back. "You mean like you fixed things with Mike's wife? Or Danielle's job?" Tears were streaming down her face. "I love you." "No," I respond. "You loved our life, the stability, the status. But me?" I point down to the papers. Page 43 is a transcript of you saying how boring I am and laughing. A look of surprise flashed across her face. "I didn't mean—" "Josh is so anal about stuff," I recite. "You should see how he hangs his shirts in his closet, by color, same distance apart. It'd be cute if it wasn't so boring." "They were just words," she cries. "Dumb jokes. They were real, Laura. It was real." The clock strikes 3 times. "What do you want?" she asks finally, her voice small. "Money? The house?" "Fairness. It's all in the papers." She flips through the pages, leaving dark mascara smudges on the corners. "This isn't fair. You're leaving me with nothing." "Actually," I say, "I'm giving you exactly what you came in with, less whatever you paid for the hotels with Mike." She looked up from her phone, startled. "You can't prove—" "Page 27. Credit cards. You liked the Golden Gate Hotel, right?" She broke down, crying into her hands. "Please, Josh, I'll do anything you want." "You already did it all," I say softly. "That's the issue." I picked up my overnight bag from beside the stairs, and she noticed it for the first time. "You can't go. Not right now." I left the papers on the counter. We need to have them filed by the end of the week. My lawyer's number is on the bottom. Please don't leave me, she says, standing up awkwardly. We can do therapy. We can start fresh. Before I leave, I consider saying something nice, but then I remember just how egregious his offenses were. I could have forgiven one affair, I say to him, but this was just too much. Josh, you made this mess, Laura. I just wrote your blueprint for blowing it all up. I closed the door, leaving her sobbing, and walked out to my car. Miss Morton, did you drop off the papers? Yeah, I'm doing it. I began to drive away, looking back at Laura through the living room windows. She was clutching the divorce papers and crying. Everything had worked out perfectly, just as planned. I left my wife, my house, and my old life behind, and drove away toward a new beginning, a fresh start. And this time, I wouldn't take anything for granted. I lay awake in a motel that night, and for the next 3 days, I drove up the coastline, trying to forget what had happened. But I had set my GPS for downtown, and had my suit ready to put on in the morning. My divorce was set for 9 a.m., and I planned to use the system to my advantage this time. The sound of our footsteps echoed in the dimly lit hallway as Miss Morton and I made our way through the courthouse. Please don't get emotional, she says, grabbing her glasses. Just let the evidence do the talking. I design buildings, I assure her. I'm very precise. I enter the courthouse and see Laura and her lawyer sitting inside the courtroom. She's wearing the blue suit. Please stand. The bailiff announced our arrival. Judge Harrison looked down at us from the bench, her stern expression peering over reading glasses. Bennett versus Bennett, she says. Divorce court. I could feel Laura staring at me as I sat down, but I didn't turn to look at her. Your Honor, Miss Morton said, we have evidence to present in support of our petition. She began putting up photos of Laura and Mike on an easel. Objection, Laura's lawyer gets up. These pictures were taken from cameras on a property that is half owned by my client. Miss Morton cuts him off, fully within his rights to do so. The judge looked at the photos for a few moments before saying, Objection overruled. Proceed. Every time another piece of evidence is presented in court, I watch Laura's face. She looks more and more uncomfortable with every item of evidence. Bank account statements, credit card bills, text messages displayed on a screen. And so, Your Honor, Miss Morton carries on, Mrs. Bennett used her shared money to pay for her love affairs. I see Laura lean forward and whisper something to her attorney. In addition, Miss Morton says, holding up another piece of paper, Mrs. Bennett was recently fired from her place of employment for inappropriate behavior in the workplace. Your Honor, Laura's lawyer stands up again. I don't see how this is relevant to... It is relevant, Miss Morton interjects, when determining the distribution of assets and her capacity to support herself after the marriage is dissolved. The judge nodded. Continue. The rest of the morning is spent listening to evidence being presented about my marriage. I do my best to remain calm, answering questions when asked. Mr. Bennett, Judge Harrison asks me, you've laid out a very specific case. Why? I looked her in the eyes and said, if you want to build something that lasts, you need to start with a solid foundation. That goes for everything. She almost smiled at that. A few minutes later, there was a break. Laura sat on the other side of the room and looked at me. Her mascara had started to run. Josh, she says quietly as I walk by. Please, I kept walking. Good job, she says as we leave. Stay calm. At the time, Laura's lawyer tried to downplay what she had done, saying that she was a woman who had made mistakes and that she didn't deserve to be punished in this way. It sounded silly given the evidence on Miss Morton's desk. Judge, Laura blurts out of nowhere, can I say something? The judge thought it over for a second, then said, I'll allow it. The woman got to her feet and straightened her skirt. I know I did some things that were wrong, but after 17 years of marriage, doesn't any of it count for anything? 7 years, I mutter back. We were married for 7 years. She winces. It felt like longer, because what we had was real, Josh. It was real. Mrs. Bennett, Judge Harrison interjects, do you have any reason to disagree with the evidence presented here? She shook her head. No, Your Honor. All right, please have a seat. The rest was just a formality, splitting up our assets according to who had contributed what, and with my proof of Laura's cheating and embezzlement, I managed to keep the house and a majority of our savings. Based on the preponderance of evidence, Judge Harrison says, I hereby approve the petition for divorce. The settlement terms laid out by Mr. Bennett are approved in their entirety. The gavel struck down. Everyone started to leave. I stayed in my seat and looked at Laura as she walked out of the courtroom. "Congratulations," Miss Morton says softly. "A clean break, as we discussed." I nodded and got to my feet, stretching my legs, which felt more cramped than they should have. When I got out into the hallway, it was mostly deserted, and the afternoon sun was shining through the windows. It was all over. Done. Finished. I got a text from Sharon. "Heard the news. Dinner sometime? Just as friends." I stopped by the window and looked out at the people coming and going from the courthouse building. "What now?" Miss Morton says, suddenly at my side. I took another sip of my drink and looked out at the skyline of the city. "Time to build a new one," I said, and I meant it. I took off my wedding ring a few minutes later and put it in my pocket. Looking at the white skin beneath the ring, I realized I was ready to start fresh. A new foundation, a new home. One built with love and trust, not lies. 2 weeks went by in an instant. I got the house, sold my place in the suburbs, and moved into the apartment in the sky. I quit my job at the courthouse, and the whole experience began to feel like a distant memory, just like my marriage. The key turned in the lock, and I entered my new apartment. Boxes were stacked up in the hallway, waiting to be unpacked. I had just moved in that day and was still settling in. I hadn't even set up my furniture yet. The view from the 42nd floor was breathtaking. I walked over to the window to see the city below, gleaming in the golden light of the setting sun. My phone buzzed. "Not yet," I text. "Dinner later?" "Can't wait, no tape measure." I smile, putting the phone back in my pocket. The city below looks like a sketch of a city, like a drawing of a city. There are no curves and there are no secrets. The doorbell rings. It's Tom from the moving company. "Mr. Bennett, the last of your stuff from storage is here." I open the door and tell him where to put everything. "The desk goes by the north window," I say. "I've marked the precise place on the floor." "That's the most specific job we've ever done," one of them said with a laugh. "I'm an architect," I respond, and this time it means something. "Precision is everything?" Tom interjects, smiling. I hesitate. "Not everything, just important." They unpack the bed and my desk and set up a few other things. Meanwhile, I unpack my clothes and put them in the closet. I don't have any photographs to put up, at least not here, but I take them out of the bag and put them in a drawer in the desk for later. My phone buzzes again. Miss Morton. "Final paperwork filed. It's officially done." I look out the window at my new view. It's strange to see myself reflected in the glass. I look different. Older, more mature, stronger. The movers finish up and leave. I thank them and pour myself a glass of whiskey from the bottle I brought with me. I sit down in my chair and take a sip. It goes down smooth. It's been 3 months since the trial. 3 months since I found out the truth. 3 months since I started my new life. The doorbell rings. Sharon. "Wow, what a view," she says as I open the door for her. "I like it. This is very you." "Yeah, it's linear," I tell her. "There's no corner." She put a bottle of wine down on the kitchen counter. "How does it feel? To be free, I mean." I thought about it for a second. "Like finishing a difficult project. It feels good to be done, but it wasn't cheap." She stood next to me, a little too close. "We've been trying to maintain boundaries." "Mike's got the kids this weekend," she replies. "Since the divorce. First time." "Are you okay with that?" "I think so. I guess it's true what they say. Infidelity builds character." I lifted my glass. "To wisdom." "And new beginnings," she says, raising her wine glass to clink against my whiskey glass. "In the city below, everything is normal. No missed calls or secret meetings." "I saw Laura," Sharon says, "yesterday at the grocery store." I gripped my glass a little tighter. "How did she look?" "Smaller. Apparently she's living with Danielle now." I take this in with the same disinterested awareness as I had everything else. "Josh," Sharon says, looking over at me, "do you like it?" I thought for a second. "We're good," I say at last. "We got it right. The building stayed up." "That's not what I asked." I put my glass down and looked at her. I was never looking for happiness, just survival. Then revenge. Now? Well, what about now? "Now," she took a step closer. "Do you need help with the blueprints?" she asked. And now the question was hanging in the air. Should I say yes? After what happened with Laura? "One step at a time," I tell him. "We're both work in progress." She chuckled. "Okay, fair enough. Food?" "I have a spot in mind. Good vantage points, solid construction." She laughed. "Only you would judge a restaurant based on its architectural design." We took the elevator down to the ground floor, and I watched my reflection in the mirror as we descended. I looked more and more like myself with each passing floor. The street outside was busy. I strolled down the sidewalk next to Sharon. I didn't have to measure my steps anymore. Some things, I realized, could be done without measuring. The night was still young, and we had plenty of hours.
All right, everyone's presentations are done, Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, "I'm thirsty." Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children. With zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job. Having joined the company wanting to do customer service. "I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime," he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the Inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. "All right, everyone's presentations are done." "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me. "There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer." He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the Inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. "I'm leaving." I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick? What's wrong?" Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I immediately followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their IN. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong. Mike, what have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. I didn't do anything wrong. You're still saying that? Look at him. Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract? Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go. Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him. There's no way he was pushed aside. Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he? I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.